Hi friends, welcome to level 3 of account executive, that is legal compliance. In this module, we will learn what is legal compliance and also see what accountants do when it comes to legal compliance. Friends, while running business, there are certain requirements of government which you are required to fulfill. For example, if you are running a business in India and if your sales amount exceeds 40 lakh rupees in a year, then you are required to pay tax which is known as GST to the government at a particular rate on your sales amount. And as an accountant, you have to ensure that this tax amount is calculated correctly. Tax amount is based on sales amount. So you have to again ensure that the sales amount is calculated correctly. The data of sales is gathered correctly, because if data is not correct, then the total amount of sales is also not correct. Hence, you have to ensure that correct data is gathered of sales. Then you have to determine the tax amount. After the tax amount is determined, you have to pay this tax amount to the government. And after payment, the final step is you have to file a GST return to the government. This return includes all the transaction in detail. TDS is one type of tax. Similarly, as an accountant, you have to look after TDS, PF and PT. You have to calculate them, make payment to government and also file return. And this is what accountant does when it comes to legal compliance. We will look after each and every particular tax in detail. Let's start with TDS. We have already learned TDS in detail in level 1. Government requires businesses to deduct a part of their payment and deposit to the government. For example, if your business has availed a service of let's say 50,000 and the TDS on it is 10%. So while making payment to that particular creditor, you have to deduct 10% on 50,000, deposit this 5,000 to the government as a TDS and pay the remaining balance of 45,000 to the creditor. This is known as TDS. But one question comes, does all businesses are required to deduct TDS? Before I answer this, let's try to understand what are the popular forms of businesses. Let's start with sole proprietary. So when you start a business on your own alone, then it's known as sole proprietary. When you start a business with your family, this joint unit is known as Hindu undivided family. And when you start a business with your friends and colleagues and register it as a firm, then it's known as partnership firm. You can also register this partnership as an LLP, which is limited liability partnership, wherein the liability of partners will be limited. And finally, you can also register it as a company with registrar of company. This is also a recognized form of a business. These different forms of businesses have different requirements of compliance and different advantages. So now let's go back to our original question. Does all businesses are required to deduct TDS? So the answer is yes, except for sole proprietary and HUF, which is Hindu undivided family. Sole proprietor and Hindu undivided family are required to deduct TDS only when their turnover in a year exceeds 1 crore rupees. Okay, now we know who is required to deduct the TDS. But is TDS deducted on all the payments? No. Government has listed certain types of payments on which the tax is to be deducted. And in level 1, we have already seen which are the top 5 categories on which tax is to be deducted. Professional fees, technical fees, payment to contractors, salary and rent. So this is all about TDS. Now we will see what is your role as an account executive when it comes to compliance of TDS. As an accountant, you have to ensure that each and every transaction that your company makes, you have to check whether a TDS is to be deducted or not. It means that whether the provision of TDS is applicable on the same or not. If the TDS provision is applicable, then you have to deduct the amount of TDS and pay the balance to the vendor. And this deducted amount, you have to submit it to the government. You have to deposit with the government. So basically you have to track all the transactions on which TDS is applicable. You have to deduct the TDS. You have to make a payment to the government, and finally you have to file the return. So this is what the work that you will do. For example, when you see if your company is making payment for the legal fees, then you have to deduct TDS because TDS is applicable. But if your company is incurring traveling expenses, then TDS provisions are not applicable and you are not required to deduct TDS. Once you identified the payment on which tax is to be deducted, you have to make sure that you are applying a correct rate of deduction. There are multiple rates available for TDS, so you have to check the expense type or payment type, and accordingly you have to select the TDS rate. Okay, so once you deduct the TDS, you have to deposit it with the government before due date. The due date for depositing the TDS amount is 7th of subsequent month. For example, if you have deducted the TDS in the month of July, then the due date to deposit this amount with government is August 7th. Similarly, if you have deducted in August, then the due date is 7th of September. There is just one exception. For the month of March, the due date is not 7th of April, it is 30th of April. Now let's see how actually we will deposit this amount with the government. To deposit the amount with government, you have to log in www.incometax.gov.in. On this portal, on left hand side below here, you will find e-pay tax. So click on this option, then you have to put your company's TIN. You have to confirm the TIN by putting it again in the second box, and below you have to give phone number for receiving the OTP. Once you enter the OTP and proceed, you have to select the assessment year. After selecting assessment year, you have to select the section under which you are making payment. And please remember that the TDS payment is made section wise. Suppose if you have deducted the TDS for two different categories, one is rent and one is salary, then you have to make payment for rent first and then salary, or vice versa. But you have to make the payment separately in one challan, in one go. So let's now select rent and proceed. After selecting this, you have to select the major head. So this depends on your deductee type. Suppose if your deductee is company, the form of deductee, the business form of deductee is company, then you will select company option. And if it's something else, HUF, individual or LLP, then you will select other than company option. This is the major head selection. After this, finally, this is the screen where you have to give breakup of your TDS, the tax amount, surcharge if any, interest if you are making late payment, penalty, etc. Once you populate this, the next step is to accept the terms and conditions and proceed by selecting your bank portal. In bank portal, then normally how we do internet banking, you have to put your login ID, password and proceed with the payment. Once the payment is done, you will see this screen again, and here you will see that the payment is completed. You will get a pop-up, and below this there is also a download challan option which you should use. You should keep the downloaded copy of challan for the record. So this is how we will comply with TDS payment. Now let's see how to file a TDS return. What is TDS return? TDS return is a form in which you have to fill your TDS details and your transaction details which you submitted to the government. So basically the first step of filing this TDS return is that you have to download TDS preparation utility from the government side, which is free. So to download this utility, you have to visit proten-tinpen.com. You can also search Proten Tinpen on Google and you will find the site. Once you are on this site, go to downloads, go to eTDS, quarterly returns, and finally click on regular. Once you are on this page, scroll down, you will find this option Proten Return Preparation Utility. Just click on the latest available version, and once you click on this, a file will get downloaded. You have to extract that file, and that's your first step in downloading this utility. Once you go inside this extracted folder, you will find multiple files. The most important file is RPU_TDS_4.9. This 4.9 number might change. In future you will find some another number, but the important file is RPU_TDS. Once you click on this, your software will open and then you will start preparing the form. The first field that you will select is the form type.
There are four form types: 26Q, 24Q, 27Q and 27EQ. 26Q is used for TDS deductions made on other than on salary. This includes rent, interest, commission. 24Q is for the deductions made on salary, and 27Q and 27EQ are made for TDS deductions made to non-residents. So we will proceed by selecting 26Q, then we will select regular option, and finally we will select click to continue button. This will open the form. The form has basically three parts. The part 1 includes your basic details like PAN and TAN. Part 2 includes details of company like name of company, address of company, and part 3 includes details of the person who is responsible. We usually put name of your CFO, CEO, director, finance manager in this particular section, and then you will move on to next part, which is filing details of challan. Suppose if you have filed one challan, then you have to put details of one challan. But once you go in this option, and to go to this option you have to go up, and you can see a small option which is the next option, challan. Once you in this form, you will find this entire form blank, so there are no fields available. So go down, you will find a button add row, and click on that button. If you have one challan, click once. If you have two challan, add two rows, and in this part you will fill the details of challan. Once the details of challans are done, the next step is to fill the details of deductees. So for that, again go up, there you will find one small option which is deductees. Click on that and this form will open. Again on this form you will see there are no fields available. So again go down in this form, you will find add row button. So against one challan there might be one deductee, or there can be multiple deductees. Let's say 4 deductees you have for against one challan, and suppose now you have two challans. One challan has 4 deductees and other challan has 2 deductees. So total you have 6 deductees. So you have to add 6 rows. So go ahead and go down, scroll down, go to add rows and press this button 6 times, so that 6 fields are available, 6 rows are available, and fill the details. This will conclude the form filling procedure. Now you will click on create form. Once you click on create file option, this pop-up will come. This requires you to browse 2 files. The first file is challan input file, which we will download from income tax site, and the second file is the file which just got created when you click on create file. Okay, so now let's see how to download challan input file. To download challan status input file, first you have to visit income tax site, which is incometax.gov.in, which is government site. Once you are in this site, give your login details and login inside. Once you are on home page, click on e-file. In this, click on e-pay tax, and then on this page you will find certain tabs below. So click on last tab, which is challan status inquiry tab, and this will open 2 options like the start date and the end date. So this basically is the period when you have actually paid the challan. So select that period and click on generate challan. So this will filter out and give you the results of all the challans that you have paid in that particular period. So whichever challan you want to attach in that original form which we were filling, so just download it. Once you download this file, go back to your form which we were filling, select this file there in option 1, and in option 2 select the already created file, and now click on validate. And once you validate and there are no errors, then finally the form will get created. The form means your final return will get created automatically in the folder. So this folder, if you can see, which is generated automatically, will have multiple files, and the most important file here is FVU file, basically the file with the extension FVU. First step, just zip it and you are ready to now upload this file with the government. So again, how to upload it? Go back to the portal, which is incometax.gov.in, log in again. Once you are on this portal, which is income tax portal, go to e-file, go to income tax forms and click on file income tax forms. On this you will find multiple forms. So go below, find tax deducted at source and click on file now. On this portal, first select the file that you have created, the zip file Which zip file? FUV zip file. So select that here and then click on proceed. And once you verify using the OTP option, you can see the option to verify with OTP. Select that and proceed. So this brings us to the end of this entire TDS journey. So you learned how to calculate TDS, how to make payment of TDS, and now how to file TDS returns. Now we will move on to the next part, which is PT, professional tax. Friends, now let's move on to the next compliance, which is professional tax. Friends, this is state-wise tax. So the provisions related to this tax differs from state to state. For example, if in Maharashtra, if you are earning as a male more than 10,000, then you have to pay this tax. And if female earns more than 7,500, then she has to pay tax. So this slab differs for male and for female. Similarly, if you are in Karnataka, then for both male and female, the slab is 15,000. If you are earning more than 15,000, then you have to pay tax. But here, like, employee are not required to pay the tax. It is employer's responsibility to pay the tax. So if you are employer and if you are paying someone more than 7,500 or 10,000 in Maharashtra, then you have to deduct the tax. Now the question comes, what is the amount of tax to be deducted? So again, this also changes from state to state. Now let's assume that we are employer in Maharashtra, and let's take example of Maharashtra. So now we have 2 employees. So we will deduct monthly 200 as a tax. Just for the month of February, we will deduct 300. So for 11 months, you will deduct 200 and you will deduct for the month of Feb 300. You will combine this all, and once in a year you will make payment. So likewise, if you are accountant working with this employer, you have to take note of all the employees, you have to make their list, you have to see what is their income level, and accordingly you have to calculate how much professional tax has to be deducted. Take a sum of this and pay this. When to pay it? For every year you have to pay it before June. Likewise, you have to do this calculation each and every state wise and for each and every employee within that state. So this is all about PT, which is professional tax.